Today we have a classic for the time of the year, and that is my art resolutions for 2025, how I plan to achieve them, how I set my realistic expectations, and how I ensure that I don't fall off the wagon every year when I set these sorts of goals. And hopefully, you guys can get something from this video that will also help you achieve your art goals in 2025 because I've been doing this for a minute now, and I've been pretty successful in maintaining my objectives throughout the year. So, with all of that being said, hi, hey, hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet while we talk about my 2025 resolutions, how I approach deciding them, setting them, and all of that. You'll be watching what I hope is a pretty cozy little sketch with me kind of warm up spread. At the end of the video, I will show you everything that I did in my sketchbook this week. So hopefully you settle in, and hopefully if you're comfortable, you get creative alongside me. If you have the time to watch all the way through to this video, through to the end of this video, I would really appreciate it. And if you want to talk to me in the comments down below, I'm pretty responsive and I'm always happy to talk about art and the things that I produce, my resolutions, your resolutions, and all of that fun stuff. For me, an art resolution is something that is not necessarily a finalized product that I want to accomplish at the end of the year. And I work really hard to ensure that there is no final result where I can physically look at it and say, did I accomplish my goals? Is this the magnum opus of my 2025 resolutions, right? I try to avoid setting a standard where there is something physical at the end of the year where I can look back at it and be like, okay, I did not accomplish my goal. Because I don't think that you can predict your art a year in advance. I don't think you can predict your art even a week or a month in advance unless you're working for a studio or doing some sort of kind of freelance work where you have deadlines and you're producing something by a deadline. Other than that, I can't tell you what my style will look like next week because maybe I will be working in a different medium. I'll be in the mood to work with watercolors, and my art is entirely different looking in watercolor versus my standard marker and acrylic paint pen setup, right? I don't know because I go by whims and I'm not under some sort of industrial overlord that I love so greatly and am being assigned deadlines to accomplish a particular thing in a particular style. Because of that, I don't want to set goals where my art looks a certain way by the end of the year. I produce this and that many pieces that I am particularly proud of by the end of the year. I try to focus all of my goals and resolutions around accomplishing and honing my skills as an artist, right? Because regardless of how my work looks at the end of 2026, if I approach goals such as studying composition better or doing more regular studies or spending a bit more time in my sketchbook per week to kind of maintain my artistic kind of muscle and exercise the artistic part of my brain, that's going to show regardless of if my style is something that I expect it to be at the end of this year. And I think that that's a very healthy way to approach thinking about resolutions because it's very easy to feel like a failure when you're creating art for many people. And if you set a goal that is setting yourself up for an expectation that you don't even know if you'll still have for yourself at the end of the year, it's not really the healthiest thing in the world, or you're setting yourself up for perhaps tumultuous feelings at the end of the year when you look back and you ask, did I accomplish my objective? And that's also why I don't really take resolutions particularly seriously either. I generally try to implement changes as soon as I desire them in my life. I don't wait for big moments in my life to say, I want to do this thing. I'm going to wait until the New Year's to start doing it. However, I do also think that it is healthy to every year or so, every 6 months or so, look at your objectives for yourself as an artist and say, am I progressing the way I want to? And if I'm not, how can I progress how I want to? How can I get back on track? And generally, setting that around New Year's kind of just fits the entire ordeal of everything. However, in June, I'm going to reassess all of the goals that I set in this video, probably, And I'm going to think, am I meeting these? Am I happy with them? Are they adhering to my expectations and things of that nature? Because at the end of the day, it's hard to predict how you'll be feeling a year from now about your art, or if you still have the same desires artistically. And there's nothing wrong with changing your mind and putting a punishment on yourself for not achieving something as admittedly silly as a 2025 New Year's resolution, because you just became a different version of yourself over those couple of months, um, or even the whole year. It's just kind of foolish, right? It's not fair to beat yourself up because you're different and your perspective is different than it was 12 months prior. And when it comes to the entire hype around New Year's resolutions and the way that we kind of think about them, it is additionally something that I very much don't want to fall into the toxic mindset of, especially as somebody with a compulsivity disorder who gets very, very intense and hyper fixated on things being the way I want them to be, and will develop basically compulsive and intrusive thoughts surrounding ideas of failure or inadequacy, about not accomplishing certain things or things not happening the way that I lined them out to go, if that makes sense. First and foremost, every resolution that I talk about in this video for me and this year are going to be reassessed, and I'm not going to be particularly strict about adhering to them if I don't feel like it in the future, because I know that I am a very driven individual and I'm capable of looking at my resolutions month by month and saying, I don't think that this is working for me anymore. And that's not the same thing as if I was kind of flippant about my desires as an artist, or if I was a little bit less committed to my artistic practice and those lack of positive feelings around it was a sign of me giving up. I'm aware that I need to do something generally related to a lot of these goals to continue progressing as an artist. And if I need to change them in a couple of months and kind of reassess the way that I approach actually executing them, I'm aware that I am not giving up on the overall goal. However, if you're somebody who really needs to set a strict standard for yourself and can't just have that kind of loose idea around changing your mind, if it's hard for you to commit to things that you find overwhelming, difficult, or frustrating, then maybe you need to be a little bit less relaxed with yourself when it comes to setting these objectives. I know that I love creating art, I love studying, and I love honing my skills and doing stylistic studies, and I want to improve and I want to continue to progress to a degree which I will not fall off the bandwagon because I felt defeated by a goal or I don't really like the way that it's going for me. I know that I can adapt and change the way I approach studying and it'll be okay. However, for others, perhaps a less flippant attitude with it is going to be a sign that you're going to be setting yourself up to give up later. And I think that's something you need to assess about yourself and something that's kind of fundamental to the setting of all New Year's resolutions, because it's not very appropriate for us to think about resolutions and not think about how we as individuals are regarding our ability to commit to things or stick through things that we find particularly difficult. You need to know your level of grit to be able to assess if you're going to be able to stick to something, whether it's thick or thin or difficult. That's another reason to set goals maybe quarterly rather than annually. And it can be your 2025 Q1 objectives. And that I think is a perfectly healthy and content attitude to have around it. I don't see any reason why we need to set goals for 12 months rather than quarters, or set our goals on a monthly basis, which some of my goals are generally designed around making a new decision every month and spending the month working on that. So, with this little preface about my philosophy around art resolutions and the New Year resolution setting, let's talk about the actual broader and then more specific goals that I want to accomplish over the course of the hopefully next 12 months, but we'll see where I end up in probably April or June maybe, and reassess from there. My first overall broad objective for the year of 2025 is to express myself more freely, basically honing my freedom of expression as an artist. And basically, how I'm defining this is I want to be better at approaching my sketchbook and not thinking about an end result, a product, and how it's going to look. I really want to get better at leaving the mindset that I need to create something desirable, visually appealing for people, that I need to be accomplishing something specific because I sat down and I opened my sketchbook. Now I need to accomplish something, and really just hone in my ability to freely express myself and put a pen to paper and not think about the kind of external pressures as an artist, right? So, this is going to be executed in the form of basically spending more time in my sketchbook, focusing on exploring just the initial ideas that come to my mind, more thumbnail sketching, and not thinking about the video, the end product, the result, but rather thinking about the fundamentals and working on chasing my instincts and whims as an artist. I talk a lot in my videos about how I turn my brain off once I start really getting into my art, and a lot of my color decisions, because I'm not really a colorist in the first place, is just kind of a whim. I just kind of go with the flow and I do what feels right in that moment. And while that really works for me on a coloring aspect, I find that I don't actually really do that when it comes to my actual sketching process and my designing. And I really want to get better at chasing my whims and just putting down my initial idea without thinking about, is it actually going to look good? And more importantly, and an issue that's been arising a lot recently when I have an idea is, am I going to actually be able to execute this to the extent that I want? I've had some really fun ideas that I've really wanted to execute for a minute now. And every time I think about them and I go to put them on paper, I'm like, but do I have the artistic skills to do it justice? And that is a really bad trap to get into, because if you don't practice doing something, you're never going to have the skills to achieve what you want in the first place. So the more that I hold myself back by saying I can't do it justice, the further I get from ever actually getting to have these ideas realized. One of these ideas, for example, is I have been really wanting to take my plant zombie people and bring them to a more kind of personalized, whimsical fantasy realm, like traditional fantasy realm. Obviously, plant zombie people and parasitic plants consuming corpses is like not real ish. Well, you know, not real when it comes to human corpses, at least. And so I want to make it a little bit more kind of approachable for people whom perhaps have a harder time putting their mind to such a gruesome and morbid idea, and find a way to incorporate plant people kind of into a more living body environment so that people don't have to confront their own mortality related to disability and chronic illness, or the general tragedies of life, when it comes to putting themselves into my plant zombie people and the kind of mental philosophy that I have around their story and how that kind of applies to people like myself, right? And so I've been really wanting to apply kind of plant magic and plant based mobility aids to fantasy people, just normal humans with a bit of plant magic and plant themed mobility aids, natural mobility aids, to be able to kind of bring the whimsy of botany and plant everything basically to a more digestible and easily relatable sphere where people don't have to confront the concept of mortality quite as directly. So, um, especially when it comes to getting less concerned about the product of a piece like this, I don't know that I need to realize this as a finished illustration yet. But the more I prevent myself from putting what's in my mind to paper, the further I get from ever having a finished drawing about this ever. So I want to get more sketchy, loose, and playful in my sketchbook. I want to be less concerned about the way my spreads look again. And I want to have a little bit more fun with mixed media and kind of implementing scrap paper and more decorative components to my sketchbook to really just ensure that it is less self critical, more experimental, and I'm not forcing myself to try and not make mistakes, right? And one of the ways I plan to do this is to implement minimum sketchbook times that I document in my Notion calendar based on kind of all of my art stuff that I document in Notion. And I want to shoot for approximately 30 minutes per day. I don't believe in the drawing every day philosophy. And so when I say about 30 minutes per day, I mean like when possible. If 30 minutes a day as actually just 3 days a week, then that's better than me not setting a goal of having sketchbook time where I really, in my calendar, in my to do list, in my work schedule, I put this is a time where I really want to sit with my sketchbook and just kind of be free to do it, right? Building in a time for you to be an artist and enjoy your art is kind of an important part for me to be a successful artist and actually complete my objectives. Some people don't really have this issue, but it's very easy for me with my chronic illness to kind of get into a doom scrolling mindset where I'm in pain, I'm not feeling super good. And so I just kind of put off being an artist and doing what makes me feel good and kind of lifts my spirits in favor of doing the lazier and less stimulating thing that doesn't even make me feel better or do anything for my health either. Because for both experiences, they kind of hurt me the same way in terms of the physical aspect of my illness. And so it really is just kind of a less beneficial form of hurting myself. That sounds very weird. I have very poor hands. My hands have extreme pain in them. They're very stiff. I have impaired mobility. Um, and generally, anything using my hands is kind of uncomfortable to painful. And so things like holding my phone, typing, scrolling, they're all uncomfortable, right? Um, that's why I can't, those people who can like write in a Google Doc on their phone. I could never. I need a keyboard. I need a place where my hands can kind of stretch out. The kind of cramped space just causes me a lot of pain. I don't have great eyes either. I'm not like super blind or anything, but like the phone screen brightness really worsens my migraines and my headaches when I don't have a migraine. It makes my eyes burn and hurt. And so, why am I sitting there looking at stuff on the internet I don't care about when I could be drawing something silly in my sketchbook or scribbling on a piece of paper? Because at the end of the day, I don't think you need to really be creating anything meaningful to still be warming up as an artist, right? And warming up is an important component to creating good art. I talk about bad art days and how you just don't create anything that feels right. You're more likely to not have bad art days, or they're going to come less frequently if you take time out of your day to warm up and really just be loose, expressive, and get those creative juices flowing, right? And so, why do I continue to do the less beneficial thing when overall I really just could be drawing or drawing circles on a piece of paper, right? And it's really just something where I really need to take the time where I know that I'm sitting and I'm just doom scrolling or I'm kind of blankly doing nothing on my phone playing a mobile game or something. And I need to just set that as a time where I can do 30 minutes of art per day and put that into my calendar so that it's set there and it'll appear in my Notion tab at the top of my screen. It'll say drawing time, 30 minutes left, 23 minutes left, and I can pull out my sketchbook that is always directly next to me when I'm at my work desk anyway and be an artist, right? And that's not going to work for everybody. Some people don't benefit having a set time to draw and things like that. But I very much get excited to draw just right out the gate. I love putting a pen to paper, even if I create the ugliest thing on the planet. I have some really, really hideous sketches, and that's fine and I enjoy it. So I don't really see a point in punishing myself and doing something that's less desirable for me. Some people will prefer the doom scrolling, and that's okay too. I just know that for me, I can put art in that time, and it will be a big improvement for my mental health and my artistic practices. So that's just for my freedom of expression goal. However, setting time aside to do 30 minutes of art per day ish when possible is, you know, something that's not going to work for everybody, but I also kind of live at home and am not really able to leave the house. So I'm quite literally home all day, every day. I really do kind of have time to draw between my work, my internship, YouTube, um, and college. I really do have time. I'm in college for art too, so it really isn't an excuse. Like, that is my homework, is to create art. So, for me it works. It won't work for everybody, and if you don't think you can do it, or that setting a goal like that, when you miss it, it'll make you feel bad, then don't do it, okay? Do not set goals that you think will make you less successful as an artist or beat you down when you don't succeed, okay? You really need to think realistically about yourself, who you are, and how you function to ensure that your goals are best set. And I can't decide that for you, but I know that this is something that works for me and has worked in the past, so I'm going to do it again. So let's move on to the next goal. My next goal is more quote finished unquote illustrations. Now, these aren't actually finished drawings. These are not kind of completed pieces. Like I mentioned, I don't really believe in creating a goal of finishing more art. I just don't have a better way of articulating what I want to do. So basically, what I'm trying to express with this goal is that I want to take more of my art in my sketchbook and move it to paper outside of my sketchbook. And it kind of breaks through that kind of sketchbook phase a little bit. It brings it to a separate level than a sketchbook, but I'm really not thinking of this as a finished drawing. I just want to take my character designs from my sketchbook and I want to kind of bring them out of my sketchbook and do them on slightly bigger pieces of paper, explore the characters on like specific sheets where I'm not keeping it in that kind of sketchbook space where it's easy to get lost. And when I finish my sketchbook, it kind of goes back on the shelf and I have to go figure out which sketchbook was it and kind of go through that kind of inconvenient process. So I'm really just bringing my ideas to a space outside of my sketchbook that I can kind of more easily organize in like clear files and maybe put in a binder or something. Well, I don't really like binders, they hurt my hands, but like a folder or something so that I can just kind of have more physical art outside of my sketchbook because I love holding a portfolio and a box of loose leaf art. Even when I do gesture drawings on loose leaf paper, like literally just printer paper, I feel really satisfied. There's something about having that separate piece of paper that brings me a lot of joy. And even though like the art's ugly and like it's 30-minute gesture drawings, I like the feeling of it. And so I just want to bring more of that into my kind of artistic practice and just kind of bring more loose leaf paper into my creative space so I can grab it and I can explore my character designs just on like one little sheet. And I'm talking like probably printer paper. Like I'm not talking high quality good paper, nothing that I would actually like do and create something nice on. And so it's mostly just for my own personal satisfaction and the kind of desire to have more art just out of my sketchbook. Really, that's like my goal. Most of my art is in a sketchbook, and I have like 3 sketchbooks on my desk, not because I want to have sketchbook 9, 10, and 11 all there, but because I like to look at my old art and I really don't want to have to go find those sketchbooks and remember which one's which. And it's inconvenient and it takes up a lot of space. So the solution is to just put more art on separate pieces of paper, really. I also find that sometimes I just really want a slightly bigger piece of paper than my sketchbook allows. I don't like working big, so I really hate like 9 by 11 and a half sketchbooks. Like they really bother me. They're uncomfortable. They give me the ick when it comes to like regular sketchbook time. I generally like to use them as like a finished illustration place. Like I go to my 9 by 12 sketchbook and I'm like, I want to start a finished piece that I would put in here, right? But it's not something I want to do my daily regular sketching in. So kind of just having that 9 by 12 ish, or no, printer paper is like 8.5 by 11 or something, whatever the printer paper is. Just having that in a pile where I can just grab it and I can just doodle on is sounds really satisfying, and like it'll give a little bit more variety and help change the mindset of art. I feel like if you're creating bad art in your sketchbook and you're really just not feeling great about it, maybe move to printer paper, draw some stupid squares, do some silly circles, do some hatching studies. I don't know, just have a bit of fun on that kind of separate piece of paper that feels inconsequential. There's something about a piece of printer paper that has so much less value to it, mentally speaking, to a sketchbook, which is sort of your anthology of your thoughts, right? So it also creates this idea of more freedom and not really having to worry about if it looks good or not. You can always just like light it on fire or throw it away if you don't like it later. Um, and this also kind of comes back to my freedom of expression goal, which is part of why I have it, because I really want to think about my art and put it on paper and not feel like I'm not good enough, right? So having this paper that I don't care about, that just feels inconsequential, where I can kind of put down these ideas, is going to just further bolster my pre-existing goal that I already have for the year, which is to be more expressive of my initial thoughts and the things in my head and create just more freely and authentically to myself. Not to say that my current art isn't authentic, obviously, but I feel like I do get trapped in a mindset from time to time where I feel like I really need to only be creating finished art and showing finished art. And despite the fact that I love my sketchbook sessions here on YouTube, sometimes I just feel like maybe it's not as interesting as seeing somebody start and finish a really stunning illustration, even though I rarely do those. And I know that's not true because there are people here and you guys are here and you watch my stuff. But for some reason, when I watch other people on YouTube, other artists, I just feel like I'm not creating enough finished work. And so I think that gets me in a mindset that my sketchbook needs to look appealing, or that I need to have a value beyond the fact that I talk and I ramble and I'm a goblin, which is something that's very characteristic of me and my channel and what I really like to do over here, because I like to listen to people ramble about unhinged stuff with no regard for like theme or consistency. Is what I find interesting, and it's what I think about when I'm drawing and I try to find, right? So, overall, generally speaking, I create the type of content I love to watch, but when I watch other content that doesn't do that, I'm like, am I a failure? And I'm not. I know I'm not. None of us are failures as artists because we like to create a certain way or because our sketchbook looks a certain way. That's just stupid to think about it like that, that we're failures because we don't create how other people create. And I'm aware of that. Like, it's completely foolish and nonsensical, and yet I can't help but fall into that kind of imposter syndrome mindset from time to time. So I'm also making this goal specifically because I think that it'll help me feel a little bit more free and kind of naturally expressive about myself. So those are my broader goals, where I really don't have anything specific that is supposed to come out of them, like in terms of a like general skill, if that makes sense. Like my more specific goals, I'll be getting into particular skills that I want to practice and hone throughout the year, the very specific things that I feel were lacking in my art last year and that I want to really improve upon this year. So let's get into my 2025 specific art goals, leave the broad into the nitty gritty, scary stuff. And yeah, so my first kind of specific art goal that I have for 2025 is that I want to draw more animals, like not good. I just want to practice them more. And I'm thinking about doing this in the form of a bi monthly animal study, keeping it playful, expressive, but aim for a kind of mini type of like drawing on a separate piece of paper where I can be like, this is my reference for how the project or the experience ended. Because I feel like when I sketch animals in my sketchbook, I kind of immediately forget that I did it. And I literally think to myself, I've never drawn an animal before in my life. So I don't know if you watching this have seen my scientific illustration videos, but I basically work on a really tiny piece of paper, not super tiny, but like about the size of my hand, and I draw kind of detailed lichen photos, lichen line art, and reference from photos that I take in my local area, and kind of I take zoomed up lens photos, and then I also draw kind of like those internal components of the lichen or super close up structures, right? And I've done that for a couple of plants as well. I want to, on a piece of paper like that, kind of try and do a decent animal sketch so that I can just put it somewhere and be like, this is about how I understand drawing this and that animal. I'm thinking something super inconsequential, like maybe I'll do frogs in February, and then I'll do like cats in April, things like that. And just kind of every month or every other month being like, I'm going to just sit down for one of my sketchbook sessions. I'm going to really practice an animal, try and figure out how it would look in my style. Because I think that's the issue that comes with animals for me, particularly. I first learned to draw people by drawing them from life, and then I started copying the anime characters I liked. And then once I understood the human anatomy and the way the character looked in their own style, then I can kind of figure out how they look in my style and kind of blend the two and figure it out. And I've talked about it a couple of times on my channel, but I don't produce fan art videos very often. But for me, I really need to think, how does this person look in my art style? Because my art style will change a little bit depending on the general character and the way that they're kind of portrayed in their original media, then translating it to my style, because perhaps the style itself says something about the character that their features or kind of their attire don't entirely narrate, right? So if you think about a style that's super kind of dark and dreary and kind of more, think Victorian Gothic versus something that's more kind of jelly art, playful, those kind of say something outright about the character and the attitude without them talking and communicating, right? And of course, once you start communicating, they start moving. You hear the way they articulate and enunciate their words, or they carry themselves. That will give a lot more of their personality. But outright a jelly art style versus something more Victorian Gothic is going to give you a different impression of the character, even if they're a super crude loudmouth kind of character in that jelly art style. And so I really want to carry some of that attitude and like the playfulness of one style or the gothic of another into my style, despite the fact that my style is neither, right? So I'll think about it. I'll kind of try and emulate the original style, and then I'll figure out how they would look in my style, kind of get the feel of how they look in their natural habitat of whatever show they're in, and then kind of work through that process. And it's just something I need to do. It's probably because I'm not super like bright and in tune with a particular like dead set style. My art all looks like my art. However, if you put two pieces next to each other, you can see distinct differences between the way I approach drawing the nose in one piece versus the other, right? So it's kind of a fluency or kind of like a lack of strictness with myself that I think makes it a little bit more complicated. But basically, I just want to do some playful, expressive, doodle, scientific illustration-y drawings of animals. And when I say scientific illustration, that is totally wrong. My lichen photos are like trying to capture the lichen in real life. If I find that all cats in my style are going to look like chibi babies, then that's what that little end reference photo is going to look like. It's just going to be based on that, right? And so it's not super like complicated. It's just something very simple and approachable for me to start conquering my fear of animals, like artistic fear of animals, right? Because I'm horrified of drawing animals. Like every time I think I want to draw an animal in a piece, I'm like, nope, can't do it. Don't know how. I'm a failure, right? And obviously, you need to practice to conquer your fears, right? Same thing with drawing hands. All the artists who are like, I can't draw hands. I couldn't draw hands. I drew like 30 billion hands. I literally bought the book of 100 hands, studied the 100 hands book, and I feel pretty good about them now, right? Um, if you really, really put your mind to it and you really want to learn, then you can learn. And if you don't care about learning to draw hands or care about learning to draw animals, don't bother, honestly, unless you need it for your job or your career path. Don't put the energy into learning something that you don't even like doing. I want to draw cats in my damn illustrations. I want to give my OCs pet frogs, and I'm going to do it. Dang it. I need to learn first. So that's just kind of my mindset around it. I also have one more goal that's kind of nestled under this one. And I want to do a biannual basics practice, just kind of reviewing composition, values, color mixing, and perspective. So every 6 months, I'm basically going to just kind of reassess where I'm at with these things and think to myself, do I feel pretty okay about them? Am I slipping? Because I don't do perspective very often, like very rarely. Like, I don't think about perspective at all. So I really want to start kind of thinking every 6 months, where am I at with perspective? Do I still kind of understand it, or am I slipping? And then if I am slipping, kind of re-go through the process, do a little bit of thought around it, and kind of work on that. And so this is an every 6 months thing. I'm only going to do it once this year, technically. But this is something I want to implement just regularly into my life, not necessarily, well, it's not biannual if I, don't do it more than this year. I'm planning on doing composition early this month, just to kind of assess where I'm at with composition specifically. So maybe it'll be the start, a test run of the biannual basics thing. But, I want to carry this on for years to come. So basically, it's something that'll not really be fully realized this year, but I'm generally going to start it, and that's kind of just overall where I'm at with that one. I want to practice again. That sounds really silly after everything I've just said, but I really want to practice again and think of art as a skill I'm learning again. And I very specifically identified the exact point that was making this such a hard and weird concept for me. And I had a lot of videos come out at the end of last year, not a lot, but multiple videos talking about bad art weeks, imposter syndrome, art block, feeling like a failure as an artist. Like every month, I'd say, I think I'm finally feeling better. And then that better would immediately keel over and die the next week. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? And I figured it out. And it's kind of silly in retrospect, but I think it's entirely the fault of my Masters of Fine Arts program that I'm in. And it's not the program itself that put me into this mindset, but it's kind of the implication of a Master's of Fine Arts, right? I didn't go to art school, let me be clear. So I did not go to a undergrad school that was focused on art. I really just took art classes and ended up getting a fine art degree with my botany degree. Nope, studio art degree with my botany degree. And it was super easy and I really didn't have to think about it. It was just a couple classes each semester. And I originally started taking them just because I loved art and I knew it would keep my GPA good for when I inevitably had to take genetics, which I did pass. It sucked, but I did pass. So at the end of the day, I didn't have that art school experience that so many people talk about having, where it's like, I have done so much art this week and I feel like I am completely drowning in art and all I'm doing is producing stupid studies of things that I don't even like and I'm drowning and I hate everything and art sucks and I'm being bullied and I'm getting roasted. I hardly even got roasted by my teachers. Honestly, the people who roasted me the worst were my classmates, and 9 times out of 10 they didn't read the description of the piece. Because, like, it'd be like, I don't understand why you did this. And I'm like, I literally put it in my artist statement, but let me explain. And then they're like, oh, wow, that was actually kind of cool. I still hate it, though. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Thanks for the critique, I guess. I mean, like, bad execution on my end. I'll do it better next time. It's like, okay, yeah, but my teachers weren't particularly hard on me either. So, ultimately speaking, I didn't really ever have the art school experience where I was constantly producing stuff. So I think when I entered my Master's of Fine Arts, I was confronted with the fact that I know the stereotype of art school, but I didn't experience the stereotype of art school. And because of that, I think that I entered this weird mindset where I constantly need to be producing something because they don't give me homework. I don't have homework. I just check in once a week. I'm like, hi, here's what I did. I didn't do anything this week. I did all of this week. I didn't finish anything, but I started this week. And they're like, okay, cool. Have fun. Then we meet up every on the 5th week. So 4 weeks in a meeting, a large meeting where we're like, wow, this is what I did over the last month. And we're like, wow, cool. We love it. Keep going. And then like you just move on with your life. I'm like, I don't even understand what I'm doing, right? Like there's no goal, there's no objective I need to complete. And so I constantly feel like I'm supposed to be producing something, but I don't know what it is. Like I'm like I have nothing to show you that's new because I don't work like this really. And they're like, "Okay, cool." And I'm like, "What do you mean okay, cool?" I feel like I literally just like didn't turn in my homework that I don't have. And it's a really, really weird feeling. And so I think that I've really entered the mindset of my sketches aren't good enough. And I very quickly found that, like, when I did submit my sketches and as something to show, they were like, oh, yeah, cool. You're taking up a lot of time, though, because you sketch so much. I'm like, but I didn't finish anything. All I have is the 30 sketchbook spreads I did over the last 4 weeks. And they're like, okay, that's cool. Fun. Uh, well, anyway, time for the next person. I'm like, I don't know if you hate it or if I just like didn't do what I was supposed to do, even though I don't know what I'm doing, right? And so I have kind of had an aversion to my sketchbook whilst only living in my sketchbook because I'm so scared of creating finished work that isn't worth it, but I'm also scared of only having sketches because I feel like I need to be making something to no end, to no defining factor, right? And so I really want to just study again. I really want to just set down an objective to study an art, right? And this ties into my biannual basics. This ties into my annual studies. But a lot of the times where I've enjoyed art the most is when I'm just sitting down and I'm like, I want to study this thing. I put up a photo on my phone and I use it as a reference. I pull up my Milanote board on my computer and I just go and I have fun. I haven't even done a plant study in months because I feel like they're not interesting enough for grad school. And I hate it. I'm having a horrible time. And I kind of had that revelation when the semester ended. I submitted my 3D modeling final, and I immediately, like, the next week produced a piece that I'm, like, completely in love with, I'm proud of, with no resistance, because I didn't have my MFA professors hovering over my shoulder in the back of my mind being like, there's a critique here, but you don't know what it is. Like, they don't even critique me. Like, I show them something and they don't tell me how I can improve the piece. They just kind of tell me what they like about it. And it's been making me really anxious. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be experiencing criticism to improve as an artist. And instead, I'm getting stuff like, I think I like your sketches more than your coloring. And I'm like, cool. They're like, your sketches are so expressive. They're so inherent to you. And I'm like, yeah, cool. That's why I preserve them. So, like, why do you hate the coloring? What's wrong with it? How do I color better? Right? And I don't get those kind of answers. And I don't know how to ask them because I don't know what I'm asking for. So, I really need to just kind of get out of the MFA mindset and be in the artist mindset. What I create as an artist is what I submit to my MFA. And if that's just sketchbook, that's just sketchbook. And I really need to enter this mindset because I'm going to be in this for another like year and a half, 2 years. And I can't just let it consume me like this and let me doubt myself as an artist for the next couple of years, right? I'm not going to progress if I feel like I'm working towards something I don't understand. And when I've tried to ask about it and I've talked about not feeling like I really belong in the MFA, I kind of get the attitude of like, well, it's because you're not here, so you're not meeting with us in person as often and you're not running into your peers in the hallways. And I don't even think my peers would like me, to be honest. Like when I hear them talk and I see them interact with each other, they don't seem like people who would really enjoy my company. And so I don't even think I'd feel better if I wasn't an in person MFA, honestly. And frankly, I wouldn't want to be there, right? I want to be at home in my pajamas with my heating pad, not my heating pad, but my hot water bottle, my tea, wearing an icy hot salon paws thing over both of my shoulders, wrapped in a blanket, on extreme doses of Excedrin in the dark with like one tiny lamp on creating art. I don't want to be in a space with other people and with a migraine, feeling like the world is blurring around me. And every time someone talks, my brain pulsates and my eyes burn, and it feels like somebody's driving nails into my ears. Like, that's why I chose an online MFA, because of my health. I really can't be around people a lot. And it's really hard on me to be in places with more than one or two people at any given time because I'm just so hypersensitive to sounds and lights and all sorts of things like that. Even the temperature of a room can make or date, make or break my entire day. If a room's too hot, then I'm down for the count. And if the room's too cold, I can't move my hands, right? It needs to be the perfect temperature. I'm like Goldilocks, or else I'm like in chronic illness hell. And I'm an incomprehensible, inconsolable beast demon that's grumbling in a corner like they're about to die, right? And so I just don't really know that I belong in my MFA, but I'm doing it because I want to be an art professor, not because I want the experience of an MFA, really, right? I have a career goal that I'm doing this for, and I need to kind of just show up for myself, not for these people I don't know what they expect of me. And maybe I'll figure it out next semester. Maybe it's just like the first semester anxiety. But I can't let that impact my art and who I want to be as an artist. And I really need to be pushing myself towards what matters most to me and not the expectations of people that I'm never going to be like, right? And so that's where I'm at with that. And it really is stupid to put a goal of practice more when all I really do is practice. Like, I hardly make finished art, but I want to practice for the sake of enjoying art and practice taking care of myself as an artist and prioritizing my feelings, my wants, and my desires as an artist over what I think other people want from me. And so I know it's kind of silly, but my goal is to practice again, but not for other people, but practice for myself, really. So let's get on to the next one. After that really, really long goal, I have a very simple goal: make better character design sheets or character design sheets in general. And it's not really particularly difficult. I'm going to do this by studying and emulating the character design sheets of character designers that I admire, love the work of, and I want to follow in the footsteps of until I figure out how I want to do character design sheets. I've never really done one of those turnaround sheets where I'm showing you all the sides of one of my characters, and I've never really sat down when I design a new character and just put them on a piece of paper where I have all of their information in that one spot. And that's kind of stupid to me. Like, I literally have to reference my own art all the time to remember what shape my OC's glasses are in, because kind of my OC's glasses shape is different depending on the glasses shape I have when I design them, right? It's like, oh, I have kind of circular lenses, they get circle lenses. My frames are rectangles this time of the year, then they get rectangle glasses. Like, it just changes based on that. Basically, I just want to create character sheets. I want to create them for my existing characters. And then when I make characters, even if I don't plan on keeping them, I make them just for the sake of having a pretty character that I draw one day. I'm going to make them a little character design sheet just to get the practice. I'm not necessarily going to finish it and have it be fully colored, but I'm going to practice the turnaround, putting the information on the paper, really just get in the flow of executing that process. I also think it's going to be beneficial because if I don't become a college art professor, then I want to be a character designer and I want to do those kind of character illustrations for a company. And like, those are my two dreams in life, right? So obviously I need to get good at doing the things that are indicative of my possible future job description. So this is also going to be paired with my next goal, which is to show my characters a little more love. I was drawing them a lot more at the beginning of the year and I kind of just fell off for some reason. And so I just want to draw my characters more frequently, explore and share their stories more with people, and help make their world a little bit more real. The closest I've gotten to doing this recently is when I've been talking about my OC Loki, how I'm kind of going to approach describing his narrative, his experience with Ragnarok, and how that relates to trauma related memory loss in kind of the real world for us real people who have those experiences. Not Ragnarok and like killing your lover and like blowing up your family, but just like how trauma kind of impacts the human psyche. And I want to tell that narrative through Loki because I want to stick pretty true to the Norse mythology and then kind of bringing that into, the modern day as my god characters are. So that is just kind of nestled into the better character design sheets. So hopefully those two kind of paired well together and were not too awkward. So let's get into my probably silliest New Year's resolution, but the one that I am most determined to achieve. I want to be less ashamed of creating fan art. I know I've talked on my channel a lot about how I love fan art and how I love to create it and all of that good jazz. Truly, like one of my most recent finished illustrations on the channel was literally me drawing Feminine Alucard from Helsing Ultimate. So, like, clearly I love fan art and I'm willing to do it. But there's been this like extra shame around it recently in my life, and I think it's because of one of my MFA professors just being really hard for me to read. Like every time I show him fan art, I kind of feel like I'm showing my dad I don't have a dad. I'm showing some uh, uh, male presenting figure in my childhood a drawing I did on like burn paper. And I'm like, hello, look at this great stick drawing. And they're like, oh, wow, that's so great, sweetie. We'll put it on the fridge. And like, they clearly didn't care. And it like kind of crushes your childhood spirit, but they put it on the fridge anyway. And you're like, at least they're not bullying me too hard, you know? It feels like that. And I'm always really awkward about it. And additionally, I want to explore fan art in a way I've never explored it before, which is I want to draw the characters I love multiple times, but with different mediums. Because as you've maybe noticed if you've been here for a minute, my art is different depending on the medium I'm using, to a significant enough degree that I think it can be really interesting to see how the same character looks when I'm illustrating them in different mediums and kind of explore how I sketch them versus how I paint them, marker illustrations with just colored pencil, and then maybe oil pastels is how I'll approach them as well. And I just want to explore that. I want to see how I would draw them with ballpoint pen versus a red sketch pencil versus how I would do a like proper illustration of them. I want to do more proper illustrations of fan art because I'm going to be honest, most of my wall art is fan art like from artists that I love that I've bought from, right? And I want to do that for other people. All of these goals are kind of silly, but they're goals mostly about my mental health and kind of supporting myself mentally as an artist whilst honing the skills that are really valuable to me, both on a professional level, either as a teacher or a character designer, and as somebody who does most of their art just for their own personal enjoyment. Really, at the end of the day, I make art because I love making art, and if I never actually work a job where I create art, I'm still going to be an artist, right? And so I really am focusing these goals on what I want to achieve and doing it in a way that suits me and kind of how I think, how I work, and the mentality that I already have around them and the mentality I want to achieve, right? A lot of these goals are based on me having a better mindset around things that already I kind of already do, and then just making them a little bit more structured in my life and then doing it in a way that will support me feeling better, right? And I think that that's how we should all think about New Year's resolutions and setting goals in our life is how is it going to make us feel better in the long term, right? Not the immediate sacrifice that we have to make. Well, when it comes to an art resolution, I don't really think there are as many sacrifices as something like Eating healthier is a really classic one. You're actually like changing your lifestyle in a way that is so fundamental that it actually is kind of a sacrifice at first. And especially financial goals, right? I very much am a financial kind of paranoid nerd. I very much keep a strong track on my finances. For people who have a goal like getting out of debt, you have to make a massive sacrifice to get out of debt, right? Because you got in it somehow. And generally, not all of it, generally it's behavior and income based. And so you have to make a sacrifice to bring up your income, for example, or cut out unnecessary spending that you probably didn't even think was unnecessary until you assessed your finances. When it comes to an art goal, really I'm just adding drawing time to my schedule and I'm spending more time studying things that I already love to do, right? I'm drawing frogs and cats, okay? Like that's literally my basically the summary is my New Year's resolution is drawing fan art, frogs, cats, and my original characters. Like that is the summary of this video. I'm just doing it in a way that is improving my composition, my backgrounds, and hopefully improving my overall mindset to have a sustainable life as an artist, right? I I think it's really silly, but my New Year's resolutions are all art based. I don't have anything else I want to achieve this year, really. Okay. So, we are going to be going through all of the art that I felt was notable in 2024 and do basically 50% of a sketchbook tour because I did not quite finish this sketchbook that I started in June. So, we'll be going through basically all of it today, and then I will do the other part two of it, when I finish it. So, with all of the